Okay, so let me ask you a question. If I told you I knew when the next big earthquake was going to hit, and not because I'm a geologist, not because I'm looking at charts or anything, but because I uh, had a chat about it with a divine being while I was, say, fixing a roof.
I'd probably say you have a really vivid imagination. Or, more likely you're trying to sell me some kind of doomsday survival kit.
Right, exactly.
Yeah.
That's the normal reaction. We want data, we want science, we want peer review.
Yeah.
But what if I
Right.
what if I wrote it down, time-stamped it, put it out there, and then maybe 3 weeks later, the ground starts shaking exactly where I said it would, and then I do it again.
Well, at that point, the skepticism starts to fight with the evidence, right? You have to move past, is this even possible? And start asking, okay, who are you and how are you doing this?
That is the very, very uncomfortable question we're getting into today. We're doing a deep dive into a collection of documents that are, and I don't say this lightly, unlike anything we've really looked at before. We're talking about the written records, the divine messages of a man named Narciso Olalo.
And we should be super clear from the start. This isn't, some big shot televangelist in a fancy suit. He's not a high-ranking church official. Olalo is, by his own account, and, well, his employment records, he's a maintenance worker.
A maintenance worker who claims to be the, and this is a direct quote, #1 instrument chosen by God.
It is a fascinating case study in belief. We have this huge archive of his writings spanning from 2013 basically to right now. And these aren't vague, you will have a bad Tuesday kind of horoscopes. These are incredibly specific visions, detailed warnings of disasters.
Floods, typhoons, even train crashes.
Exactly. And a very, very strict set of moral instructions that go along with them.
So here's our mission for this deep dive. We're not here to preach, we're not here to convert anyone, but we're also not here to just dismiss it out of hand. We're going to treat these files like data. We'll look at Olalo's specific claims, this really unique relationship he says he has with the divine, and most importantly, we're going to check the receipts. The track record he presents is proof that he's the real deal.
It's really a look into the mechanics of modern day prophecy. Although, I should probably correct myself right there. If Olalo were here, he would stop us.
Because of the title, right. I
Well-
saw that in his files. He really doesn't like the word prophet.
He's almost allergic to it. It's a huge distinction for him. He writes about this one moment where he asks God, what should I call myself? Am I a prophet, a messenger? And the answer he gets is weirdly almost bureaucratic. The answer is just calling, all caps.
Calling. That sounds less like a title and more like a function or a job status.
That is exactly it. That's how he sees it. He explains in the text that he's an instrument. You don't keep a hammer on your desk all day. You just pick it up when you need to hit a nail. He says he's only called upon when a message needs to be delivered.
It kind of implies a lack of ego, which I guess supports his whole credibility argument, this ordinary man thing he leans into so heavily.
Oh, completely. He's a maintenance man. He fixes things for a living. And he uses his own salary, his own hard-earned money from that job to fund his crusada, which is what he calls his crusade.
That really stood out to me.
Yeah.
Because we live in a world where, let's be honest, religious leaders are often tied to wealth.
Yeah.
But Olalo has this strict, zero tolerance policy for taking money.
It's totally black and white for him.
Yeah.
He quotes a command from God in his notes that says, please do not sell my words. So everything he does, the preaching, the healings, all of it, has to be free.
And he really uses that as a weapon against the established church, doesn't he?
Oh, absolutely. He has this really blistering critique of priests and pastors. He calls them false prophets. But his definition of false isn't really about their theology. It's about their bank accounts. For him, if you ask for tithes, if you pass a collection plate, you're selling God's word, period.
It's a very populist message. I'm the working guy paying my own way, and they're the elites taking your cash.
Precisely. And that builds a certain kind of trust, doesn't it? If he's not asking for your money, then maybe, just maybe, he's telling the truth. That's the psychology at play.
But he is asking for something. There's always an ask. If it isn't money, then what's the currency here?
He asks for the 3 Ps. This is the core doctrine that shows up in all the instructional texts.
Okay, walk me through them.
First is paglabego. That translates to change, but it's specifically about changing from wrong beliefs, wrong actions. The second is pagsisi, repentance for your sins.
Okay, so far that's pretty standard religious stuff. What's the third one?
Lubos na paniniwala. And this means complete belief. But here's the catch. It's not just belief in God. It is complete belief that Narciso Olalo is being used as God's instrument. You have to accept the messenger to get the message.
And I read something in there about conditional faith being a big problem for him. What's that about?
Yeah, that's like the fine print. The texts say God really dislikes conditional believers. You know the type. People who pray, God, if you get me this job, I promise I'll start going to church.
Bargaining prayers.
Exactly. Olalo's message is that faith has to be absolute. No negotiations, you just submit. If your belief depends on you getting something out of the deal, he says it doesn't count.
Okay, so we get the man, we get the framework.
Yeah.
But I want to talk about the visions themselves. Because when I read this stuff, I'm expecting, burning bushes, booming voices. But his descriptions are so strangely casual.
That's maybe my favorite part of all this. It's what you could call the best friend dynamic.
He literally calls Jesus best friend.
Capital B, capital F, best friend. And the scenes he paints are not terrifying or epic. They're domestic. They're just two guys hanging out. There's a vision where he and Jesus are in a boat just rowing. Another one where they're fixing a roof together because it's too hot.
It brings the divine down to the level of manual labor, which I guess fits his whole persona.
It really does. But those hangouts are almost always metaphors. You have to look closer. Take the cleaning vision.
Is that the one with the mop?
Yes. He sees this guy trying to clean a really dirty floor with a mop, and it's just not working. And Jesus steps in, not with a miracle, but with, janitorial advice. He says, you just splash it with water and use a hose, wash it all out.
Which sounds like great advice until you think about what a hose means on a global scale.
Exactly. The washout is a flood. The dirt is sin. The hose is a typhoon. He's describing a global cataclysm like it's a simple cleaning chore.
And the ceiling vision was kind of the same thing.
Yep. He's with Jesus, and they decide to take the ceiling off a house because it's sweltering hot. They physically remove it. Olalo's interpretation is that this meant a huge shift in the weather removing the roof that was blocking the rain. And sure enough, the source notes that right after this vision, a heat wave broke, and Manila was hit with massive floods.
What's so wild is that he's not just a passive observer in these things. He's not watching a movie.
No, he's an active participant. He's climbing ladders, he's hiding from waves. There's this one vision where Jesus shows him a map of the world pointing to south, west, and north. And then there's this bizarre little detail where he says Jesus showed him the north was under the globe.
Under the globe? What does that even mean?
I have no idea. But it's this very physical, tactile interaction with divine geography. And the point was that God told him to go to these places. His mission is physical. It involves travel.
Okay, let's get to the part that probably makes or breaks this for a lot of people. The receipts. Because, anyone can say they dreamed about a flood, but his followers point to this very specific pattern of proof.
And that pattern is all about the timeline. The sources are meticulous about the dates. Step 1. A message from God is written down and posted online on date A, step 2. The actual news event happens on date B. And that gap in between, that's the proof.
Let's talk about the earthquakes. The Nepal quake in 2015, a horrific tragedy.
Mm-hmm.
What did Olo claim about that one?
This is one of the big ones for him. On April 2nd, 2015, he records a vision where he sees a huge, wide fence. But as he looks closer, he realizes it's not a fence, it's a church. And then he watches it crumble and fall. He writes down the warning, many churches and buildings will be destroyed.
And the earthquake hit.
April 25th, 23 days later, a massive 7.8 magnitude quake. And if you go back and look at the news from that day, there are so many heartbreaking stories about historic churches collapsing, sometimes during services.
So he had the event and the specific detail of a church. What about something more recent, like the Turkey-Syria earthquake in 2023?
Same pattern. February 2nd, 2023. He documents a vision where he's inside a house and suddenly he feels like he's being rocked violently, like in a cradle. He hears things falling. It's a purely physical sensation of shaking.
And the quake itself.
February 6th. 4 days later, the massive earthquake devastates the region. The immediacy is what his followers point to there. He felt the shaking before the ground actually shook.
Earthquakes, though. You could argue they happen. But the one that really made me pause was the train.
The 2015 train tragedy. Yeah, this one is where the detail gets almost uncomfortably specific.
Tell me about that vision.
July 7th, 2015. He writes about seeing a train, and he's focused specifically on the wheels. He sees one of the wheels disengage, his word, or come loose. Then the vision shifts, and he sees people jumping into water because the crash happens near a bridge.
Wow. It's a very complex sequence. A specific mechanical failure, a bridge, people in the water.
And then on August 5th, a train derailment happens. The source material says it matches the details, including the bridge. Olalo points to that disengaging wheel as the proof. He says you just can't guess a mechanical failure like that.
It's not just travel will be difficult today. It's a specific engineering problem he claims he saw a month earlier.
Exactly. And he does the same with weather. Floods, storms, that seems to be the main form of cleansing in his whole theology, like with Hurricane Irma in Miami.
Right, he called that one out by name.
He did. June 2017, he has a vision about popular places. He specifically says Miami by name and that it needs God. Irma hits in September.
And there was a recent one, wasn't there? Storm is Stemming in 2024.
Yeah, and that vision was so mundane. He's in a house with Jesus, water is rising, and Jesus just turns to him and says, "Best friend, move your bag to higher ground, put it on the sofa. They have to rush because waves are coming."
Put your bag on the sofa, it's so normal.
But then days later, Storm Inteng hits and causes massive flooding. The interpretation is that the bag is everything valuable that you need to save before the water comes. It's a practical warning from a divine source.
It's weird, the scope is both hyper-local, like his bag, and totally global. As Son notes about Ohio and Russia in there.
Yes, in 2022, he wrote about unusual winds and tornadoes in places they don't normally happen. He names Ohio and Russia, and then the source material points to news reports of tornadoes in Ohio and waterspouts in Russia. He sees it all as one big, connected global phenomenon.
Okay, we have to touch on the political side of this. Because he might be a maintenance man, but he has some very pointed things to say about figures in the Philippines.
He does, and we have to be really careful here. We're just reporting what his texts claim as divine revelations. We are not, validating any of these political attacks.
Understood. The documents mention Senator Leila de Lima quite a bit.
They do. Olalo claims he had a vision where a voice told him de Lima was hiding things. He lists them. Hiding criminals, hiding drug lords, hiding the truth.
And there was something about J.B. Sebastian as well.
Yes. He claims another vision confirmed the public allegations about her relationship with Sebastian, and he frames it as them having a husband and wife dynamic in their illegal dealings. The interesting part for us is how he presents it. He's not saying, "I read the news and I think she's guilty." He's saying, "God showed this to me."
Which turns a political opinion into a spiritual fact.
Exactly. It just removes any room for debate. He calls her the mother of demons in one text. And then, and this is key, he links her to the priests. He says her allies are the priests, who are also sinners.
So it all comes back to his crusade against the religious establishment.
Mm-hmm.
The politicians he doesn't like are in league with the priests he doesn't like.
It's a unified theory of corruption. There's a vision where he climbs a ladder to look into a tall building, and inside he sees priests in white gowns with children. He asks God what it is, and God tells him that is the school owned by the priests using the money from the people.
It always comes back to the money.
Always.
Yeah.
For Olalo, the financial aspect of the church is its original sin, and that vision is his justification for why his own mission has to be free. He's the guy on the ladder outside looking in, they're inside, counting the cash.
So we have the predictions, the critique,
Mm-hmm.
but where is all of this headed? Because when you read the more recent documents, the tone starts to shift. It gets a lot darker.
It gets apocalyptic. There's no other word for it. The running theme is that all these disasters, the floods, the quakes, they aren't random. They're samples.
Samples, like a free trial of the apocalypse.
That's a good way to put it. They're reminders, previews of the second coming. He even has this code, 1 by 11 by 111, that he says relates to increasingly strong, unusual typhoons. Like, it's ramping up. Level 1, then level 11, then level 111.
I remember reading one vision that honestly was pretty disturbing. The one about the bodies.
That's maybe the most harrowing passage in the whole collection. He sees bodies floating in the water, wrapped up like packages, and he's horrified. He asks God, why? Why did you let this happen?
And the answer he got?
The answer he records is just chilling. He says God told him he let them die because they were sinners who ignored the messages.
That is incredibly heavy. It's a very Old Testament kind of consequence.
It is. The message isn't just, you should probably get an umbrella. It's, you need to prepare your soul.
And the mantra that keeps showing up.
There is no way to run. There is no place to hide. He says the only safety isn't on high ground or in a bunker. The only safety is the spiritual preparation he's offering.
It creates this very stark choice. You're either on board with his message or you're one of the bodies in the water.
That is the ultimatum. He says people who believe in his calling are lucky. Everyone else.
Well, they face the cleansing. It's a theology of survival through obedience to him, the messenger.
So where does that leave us? We have a maintenance worker who refuses the title of prophet, but acts exactly like one. He claims to have the timestamps to prove he predicted a train derailment, a massive earthquake.
Narciso Olalo is a very specific kind of modern spiritual figure. He doesn't need a church. He has Facebook. He doesn't need a degree in theology. He has a best friend.
He seems to appeal to people who feel let down by the system.
I think that's it exactly. If you feel like the government failed you or the church is just after your money, here comes this guy in work clothes who says, I know why this is happening, and I won't charge you a thing. He offers cause and effect in a world that feels random and chaotic.
Right. When a storm hits, most of us just see a weather pattern. Olalo says, no, this is happening because you ignored the message I posted 2 months ago. It gives meaning to the chaos, even if the meaning itself is terrifying.
And it forces you back to the timeline. You look at the Nepal prediction, you look at the train prediction. The dates are there. You can argue about what it means, but the posts exist.
And that's the challenge he leaves you with. You can dismiss the theology, you can dislike the politics, but then he just points to the calendar and says, explain this.
Which leaves us with a final thought to mull over. Science is great at telling us how things happen. Plate tectonics, low-pressure systems. But Olalo claims to tell us why.
And if a maintenance worker correctly predicts a train derailment weeks before it happens, does the source of that information matter more than the accuracy of the prediction itself?
And if he's right that these are just samples, what does it mean if the real cleaning is just getting started?
That's the question that kind of keeps you up at night.
That's it for this deep dive into the calling of Narciso Olalo. Check the sources, look at the dates, and decide for yourself. We'll see you on the next one.